here at Square Books. We're here with our old pal Kent Russell. He's the author of I'm Sorry to Think I Raised a Timid Son, which was his first book, a fabulous collection of essays. And we were lucky enough to have him here for the Oxford conference that came out. Today we're here for, I know this is backwards, but I wanted to see the beautiful cover. Just looks like Florida. And it's called In the Land of Good Living. And it's really just such a pleasure to have you, Ken. I wish we were doing this in person.
Indeed.
Love the mullet. Glad you got it back.
Yep, had to regrow it like Samson. I had to get my strength back for the push.
Wow. Well, after reading this book, I figure you probably had to just lay on a couch for about a year. Just give us kind of a real brief, setup. How you came about the idea and what the book is sort of about.
Sure. Yeah. So the genesis of the idea, I can't even claim it as my own. It was my friends who I have christened Noah in the book. And in Florida, there's kind of like a beloved senator and governor named Lawton Chiles, who, the kind of apocryphal story about how he rose to kind of political prominence was back when he was a nobody. He needed a way to kind of raise his Q score or whatever you call it. And so he figured he would just walk across and down Florida through every county and kind of, get to know the state, shake everybody's hands, hear their concerns, blah, blah, blah. It became, almost like this mythologized feat of not just like electioneering, but of like the man who would come to know Florida better than anybody else ever had. And yeah, so the buddy of mine who ultimately was included in the trip, he was like, why don't we do this? He was out of the Marines and living with me up in New York at the time. And I wrangled another friend of mine who I had done a writing program with, but who was now involved in documentary film. And the idea was that we would make kind of a gonzo documentary as we went along and down the state. But of course, as we did so, the exigencies of actually walking 1,000 miles across and down Florida at the end of the summer and into the fall and everything that entailed, it obviously became too much to actually attempt to create a documentary. So the book itself is both a retelling of that kind of endeavor, and also how, as we went along the way, we realized that, actually attempting to do like a straightforward documentary of Florida would be the least Floridian thing that could ever possibly be done. So, we took it upon ourselves to kind of, as we traveled down Florida, the spirit of Florida became to suffuse us more and more. And by the end of it, we were true Florida men, kind of just making stuff up as we went along and, trying to capture the kind of madcap con artistry of the state, through our own kind of schemes. So.
Yeah, I mean, you're making me laugh. Just it's just such a crazy premise that you thought this was a good idea and actually on some level.
I would just object that I don't know if I ever thought it was a good idea. I knew it was an idea, I knew it was something that I could do, and, hopefully like some kind of artifact would come out of it. But yeah, never, I don't know that I was ever like, boy, I can't wait to do this good idea.
Well, that's one of the great things about the book, I thought, was, it is this crazy premise, but, we start with y'all, and we should say that, you're from Florida, your family's from Florida. Noah's from Florida as well. So, it's such this crazy schizophrenic mythical, place. And, and when you guys start out, it's just like, okay, let's do this. So, you have like, you just start out on foot, like right on the panhandle, which is what us Mississippians know the best. And start just going through with like, a shopping cart to hold your film equipment and just, there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so wild. But, what was amazing to me was, obviously you're a writer, you're a journalist, so you must have been keeping, a record or diary of some sort. But then how did you go back? And I mean, you have, what's the guy's name? TJ Landers, I think, did that great book on Florida. And, you've got all these, you sort of have these adventures, but then you have your own insights in Florida, but then you have everybody from Carl Hyacin to all these people where you've sort of got these ideas of Florida, you've written on Florida. How did
Yeah.
you go back after this adventure and then sort of, piece it together? I mean,
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And, that was also part of the reasoning behind the trip to begin with, is that, Florida, it is now, I think, or at least when I was writing it, I don't know what the deal is now, it was the third most populous state in the nation. And, that is something that only really happened after World War II. But, for such a big state and for such an important state, both kind of economically and politically and all the rest of it, it really hasn't done much to kind of define itself in the national imagination, like my sister accepted, obviously, but we most of the kinds of things that people think of when they think of Florida were concocted by carpetbaggers or like people, New Yorkers or whatever, what have you, so it's really the only state in the union. I think only Nevada has fewer native born inhabitants, so it's a place where if you're actually from the place, or at least you're kind of my age and you're from the place, you kind of prickle a little bit at the idea that Florida's never really defined itself, at least in terms of the people who are from here. And that's not to say that that doesn't, that hasn't happened. Like you're mentioning, there's now, you get people like Hyacinth and T.D. Allman, and, of course, there have been great literary works in the past, like The Yearling and, Their Eyes Were Watching God and all the rest of it. But the idea was that, I wanted to be somebody who, in like a non-fictional sense, could both, kind of incorporate all those books and all those other writers that you mentioned. And, I obviously could not have done put together this book without them. But the hope was that, I could truly kind of synthesize everything, be it, the novels about Florida, the histories about Florida, all the rest of it, and kind of chop that up and, assimilated into that report narrative that you're talking about. And yeah, it was, before, as to like the actual nuts and bolts of it, I had, I tend to kind of do that research beforehand, at least so I know, it's the worst thing you can do when you actually go to write a story non-fictionally is to think that you know what you want it to be beforehand, because then you have like this ossified notion, and, you may be training your gaze in such a way that you may miss out on, some other meaning that hadn't even, come to you beforehand. But I really wanted, I tend to kind of read that stuff beforehand to get those ideas in mind. And then, whatever, like I make like a weird mise en place, like master research document. And then like, I will of course go back and revisit it when it's time to write it, once the journey is done. But by then, all the things that I thought might be important or that I might want to talk about or that I thought were, hugely like weird tangents that I could go on and stuff, that all kind of falls away like rocket boosters. By the end of it, like I know what the story is once I've come back and done it. And then, whatever was like feeding into those ideas beforehand, like sprouts in that finished product.
yeah, and then also you sort of effortlessly put, stories about Henry Flagler, who,
Yeah.
Developed so much of Florida, or Walt Disney, and how he built, Walt Disney World, and how Orlando bloomed up. And, you intertwine them so artfully, with your adventures. How was that? Did you go back and look at the film, and notes, or
Yeah.
how did you weave all these adventures through that narrative, I guess?
Yeah. No, that's, the truly the being on the road, like my buddy Glenn, who is the documentarian who is taking the actual footage, like he can tell you he's got hundreds of hours of footage. He's a he was a documentary, he worked in documentary beforehand. Now he's a documentary producer, so he still works in documentary film. But the footage remains his like white whale, I guess, because he has, if reels of film still existed, he has reels and reels of this Florida footage that he's like, yeah, I would have to take like 2 years of my life off to go through all the stuff we shot. But like I, at the same time, as per my normal kind of MO when I'm out like reporting something or I'm going to write about something, I'm taking notes. I have little voice recorders. I actually, one thing that again, to go back to like the nuts and bolts of it, like normally, I would be taking notes on a notepad or what have you. But when you're walking by the side of the highway in Florida and you're just, just shooting sweat off of your body, you discover that like you can't actually take notes without just disintegrating all the paper products in your hands. So it became like I learned how to like use one of those phone swipe keyboards, where you just like move your thumb around and like just trace the word you want to say. So now I can like not even look at a phone and just like write at like 20 words per minute or whatever, just like using it that way. So yeah, as we were going down the road, I was like doing that constantly, and in fact that was a big driver behind like I simply refused to carry my bag. Like this was I made it a point, and I mentioned this in the narrative itself. Like I was vehemently opposed to the idea that this would be like a journey of self-discovery. Like the point of this wasn't like me actually doing this to like better understand myself and to like go through the burden, but then the achievement of carrying like a 50-pound bag. Like hell no, that was not the point of this. So
this was like no walk across America was not. This was not going to be walk across America.
Yeah, no, and that's why, at the outset I got the shopping cart, and then later on baby carriages and jogging strollers and stuff, because I needed my mind to be like a beautiful receptive sieve through which, I would catch all the energies and the metaphors and the scenery and what have you. So yeah, long story short, while I was walking around, I was consciously like keeping one eyeball on each car that was traveling my way to make sure I didn't have to juke it out before I got turned into a cloud of mist. But then, yeah, I was also like taking notes. Like no matter what we were doing, I was taking notes the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's talk about do you have the shopping cart, and then you procure this antiquated buggy, and then you have a jogging stroller, and your mates are, particularly Glenn, is not really like down with this, but you have all these different vehicles. You got your stuff. I mean, let's talk about just the sort of physical drudgery and the amount of roadkill and just all the stuff that you run across, the speeding cars. I mean, give us a little bit of just sort of the harrowing, beat down day to day. I mean, you guys were often camping, trying to find somewhere to light. Yeah. Sometimes you get a motel room. Just, give us a little sense of all the life on the road, I guess.
Sure. I mean, at first it was just terrible and grueling. I mean, the first couple days we could only do like 8 miles a day because, as I put it in the book, like I did zero training for this. I rolled up to the adventure like an alcoholic baseball player in the 40s, arriving at spring training being like, I'll play myself into shape. And like that is totally how that transpired, at least to begin with. Like the beginning was awful. And in fact, it was kind of the opposite of what you would want, at least in terms of like the day-by-day difficulty. To begin in the Panhandle, holy shit, excuse me. But if I had known that, like we began at the highest difficulty, and then like as we continued, the level of difficulty got progressively much easier, so that by the time we hit Miami, it was like almost a literal cakewalk. But to begin in the actual Panhandle in early September, when the heat has not yet lifted, and it's just piney woods as far as the eye can see, that was not fun. And it just, but it did become like its own routine, to where, at the end of each day, like we were never really too far from a motel. Like we never went more than like 4 days just camping because, it's Florida. It's a rather, conurbations are everywhere. So you're really not too far in between like a city or, whatever. But so we could like camp surreptitiously behind like a power station or like a Sunoco or something for a couple days. And then, every like 4th day, we would just have to get a motel because nobody wants to actually like guerrilla camp in like Orlando, But each day, like you got used to the rhythms. And so regardless of whether or not you're in a tent or you're in a motel room, like we would know to like look on Google Maps for the next day to see like, okay, like we can go like 8 miles and then there's a gas station, and then we can go like 5 miles and do this and blah, blah, blah. So each day had like its own kind of like logistics planning. And that also tied into the actual like reportorial aspect of it as well. And like the filming aspect, where it's like the actual difficulty of like trying to do that logistically, and then being like, okay, in like 72 hours, we're going to be in Sop Choppy, and we need to like contact the worm grunters now because we want to like film with the worm grunters, and we're only going to be in Sop Choppy for like 36 hours. So like somebody's got to Facebook message them like right now, and if they don't get back to us, well, you know, we have to keep moving, blah, blah, blah. So like the actual kind of difficulties of attempting to do like one thing while also attempting to like make a substantive documentary about Florida at the same time. Like ultimately, as I earlier, they became to be too much as we walked along, and we realized that you know, we would have to get a little creative with like the verisimilitude of like walking and then you know, like still trying to capture Florida along the way. But yeah, no, it definitely, like by the end of it, I would say we could mash out like 17 to 23 miles per day, like, you know, and be fine. Like it wasn't what was difficult about it, you know, it's not like one, you know, like a book about, you know, going along these trails and it's difficult altitude changes. It's Florida. It's just, you know, flat as a plane of wood. But what did really, really suck is just walking along asphalt. Like you wouldn't think about it, but it's just so hard, like literally just hard. So that like all your joints just like swell to, you know, twice the size. My ankles look like Quaker Oats canisters by the end of this, but yeah.
Yeah, I was
Anyway.
gonna ask, like, what you must have a favorite shoe now. Like, you know, your feet destroyed like sort of instantly, and you just go with the shower sandals. And
Yes,
you know,
correct.
do you have like do you walk anywhere anymore? And two, do you have like only certain shoes will do, and shoes are the greatest luxury you can have now?
I do actually. I walking has now just become like a, you know, not to toot my own horn here, but yeah, if it's like 2 miles away, who cares? Like I'll walk to that. But yeah, it's no, the only shoe that I require now, and that was my grand mistake, is I thought that, you know, to kind of legitimize myself, I would buy like a hiking shoe. You know, like I would, of course, if you're going to go on a hike, you need a hiking shoe. And I went to like a, you know, Bass Pro Shops or whatever it was, and bought these like gray and black, like severe German looking things. They looked like angry cocoons. And, you know, I put them on my feet, and I tried to wear them, you know, along through like Destin and Seaside and, you know, up to about Apalachicola. And, you know, I was like, this is what you do when you hike. But, you know, day by day, like speaking of a cocoon, it was like turning my very, very flat feet. I have like almost perfectly flat feet. It was kind of turning them into like disgusting butterflies in those cocoons, like just blisters, toenails falling off, blood everywhere. So after like one night in which we tried to pitch camp, you know, it was a night in which we had to camp, and we tried to camp like beneath this kind of bridge going over like a little drainage swale, whatever, what have you. And of course, you know, the water level rose throughout the night, and eventually we were all sitting in like 1 inch of water, and I'm trying to remove a blister bandage, and I accidentally like deglove my pinky toe. And so after that moment, I was like, screw it, screw the boots, we're not doing this anymore. And I just wore one. I split time between two pairs of Nike shower sandals. So shout out to Nike. If you want to you know, do a little sponsored content with me, let me know. But yeah, the
Yeah, you should be
remaining
like you should be a sponsor of some kind of orthopedic doctor in Florida. You should be on all the
yeah.
billboards. Like,
Yeah, no, but to answer your question, the only kind of shoe I need is like something that's like perfectly flat. And most shower sandals, you know, shower sandals, Chuck Taylors, something like that. That's what I'm looking for now. Nothing that will like give my feet
well,
PTSD.
I'm glad you survived and your feet are intact. So you know, so you do meet all these people on the road. I mean, it's pretty great. I don't even know who to pick. I guess I'll let you pick. You know, I mean, also it was under the, you know, right when the election, the 2016
Mm.
election, and you know, Florida played a large role in that, and none of us really saw this coming, and you got right in the middle of it. So that's one thing I wanted to ask you about, was just the shadow of the election and being there in that, and then two, I mean, you know, you meet all these people like the father and son you go fishing with
Mhm.
off of Achacola, or you know, the strip club owner, and you know,
Yeah.
just it's just this litany of just great characters. So just enlighten us with anything you want to talk about in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I knew, like, we kind of knew. Well, one thing I guess I should mention first is that for anybody who's not really familiar with Florida, it's important to understand that, like, there are at least three and, maybe as many as eight, 6 to 8 distinct Floridas within Florida. And so, when I was talking with my buddy Glenn, the documentarian, I was like, you're going to need like you know,
Who's from
not,
Canada, by the way?
yeah, Canada. So he had no idea what he was getting into. But I was like, yeah, you're going to want like more or less representative characters from like each kind of area. So, for instance, the Panhandle, which we've just been discussing, is like very much a part of the South. It's a truism in Florida that the further north you are, the more south you are, like southern you are. Whereas the further south you go in Florida, the more kind of New Yorky and kind of, just upper northeast you get. So, the idea was mostly like, can we find people who kind of typify something about this part of Florida? So, when we're going through like Apalachicola, like you mentioned, we wanted to get, hopefully like oystermen, guys who get oysters out of Apalachicola Bay. But of course, environmental degradation and, just kind of political squabbling and like the BP oil spill have kind of left that famous, oyster bed bereft of oysters. And so we had to find like shrimp guys who used to be oystermen but are now shrimpers, and it was that kind of thing as we went along. And of course, sometimes you get excellent characters who do kind of lend an aura of professionalism to what you're doing, like when we're going out with shrimpers, or like when we're in Tampa and we got to spend the day with Joe Redner, who is the self-proclaimed inventor of the lap dance. And Tampa itself has this like weird history of both like sin and iniquity and also like organized crime and everything. So there were some instances where like, fortune and serendipity smiled upon us, and it like felt like we were actually doing the thing. We're actually walking. And then there were days where, it was like, well, God damn it. Like, what are we doing and what have we done? Like going through Orlando with a man who proclaimed himself to be, there's a theme park in Orlando called the Holy Land Experience. And we had discovered a guy on Facebook who claimed that he played Jesus at the Holy Land Experience. And I won't, no spoiler alerts here, but he was not Jesus from the Holy Land Experience. But, some might say that led to an even better stretch of non-fictional Florida encapsulation. So yeah, it was, I would be able to suggest like, as I'm from Florida, I would be able to be like, okay, this part of Florida really needs somebody, in this industry or who does this or whatever to kind of encapsulate this. And then, our success or failure in finding that kind of person, we kind of, towards the end, it was more like the idea was we don't need to find anybody else. We are those people now. We contain all of Florida now, having walked through it. So, et cetera, et cetera.
The Uber Florida men.
Yeah, exactly. It's you start out, you attempt to capture Florida man, and then in the end, you are Florida man. That's that's basically a log line for the book. But
well, there's a couple of questions. One person wrote in, how long did it take you to do your book, and what was the most difficult thing other than the footwork? Because I guess you did this in 2016. Here we are in 20 in a very weird time, but yeah, take you, and what was the most difficult part?
So, the actual walk itself was from like late August 2016 until late December 2016. And so, it was like 4 months, and we could have done it a lot faster if we were just trying to get it done. We could have done it a lot slower, but like some people, not me, but some people had lives to get back to. I could have stayed down there forever. And in fact, with each passing day when I wake up in self-quarantine, I wish I was behind like a 7-Eleven in a tent, like screaming at another street person to stay away from my stuff, Like I'd go back there in a heartbeat. But yeah, it took roughly 4 months to do the actual walk. And then, the vicissitudes of publishing being what they are, it took me probably 2 years to write the book, like, and to really finish it. and, publishing being what it is, like they kind of wanted to, hurry up and wait process. So the book's finally coming out now to kind of
Just in
coincide
time
with
for the next election.
precisely. There you go. All in all, like it was like a 2.5 year kind of undertaking. And so what was the other half of that question? What was like dangerous aside from the footwork?
Yeah, I think what was the most difficult thing,
Oh,
as far as putting it together?
I think, actually what was difficult wasn't necessarily the walk itself, because like I'm kind of hinting at here, it at the outset, within maybe the first third of it, it was like, boy, this sure is hellish. Like in those days when I was still attempting to wear those hiking shoes, like within the first 300 miles. So like the first like 30% of it, I like couldn't actually stride like a human being. I was doing like a little hop along step because, you just had to kind of adjust your gait to all your blisters and stuff. And I was just thinking like, there's no way that we're going to complete this. This is truly awful. Like, we don't know what we're doing. Glenn, the cameraman, like he doesn't know what he's doing. Like he had been like a producer, but now he wants to like be a cameraman. And Lord knows if he's even been like turning the sound on half the time. But by the end of it, in the same way that when you do anything that seems really unpleasant at the time, but like, is gratifying, like, that kind of the more unpleasant it is in the moment, the more you're going to like look back on that with, great warmth and in a kind of nostalgia, even if you warp some of how bad it was in the time. So the walking itself, like I was just saying, I like actually look back on with great gratitude. What was actually difficult was, as all writing is difficult, is kind of sitting, like I was saying, for like 2 years, basically, off and on, but over that span of time, just sitting there and like writing up this narrative, being like, who could possibly want to hear about like me peeling off my second big toenail and like having it just like come off like the gull wing door of a DeLorean, like, what am I doing this for? So like that kind of the psychic turmoil of actually doing the walk was one thing, but then the psychic turmoil of revisiting the walk and turning it into prose, that was far more harrowing. Being like, oh my God, did I do this all for nothing? Like, is this ever going to actually be a thing? So yeah, actually digesting it was the harder thing.
You pulled it off, my man.
Thanks.
So like there's, all these great Tim Dorsey, Carl Haase, John McDonnell, Randy White, so many great crime fictions from Florida. Do you have any theory as to why that is in your infinite Florida wisdom?
Yeah, I do actually. In the same way, like within the book itself, within the narrative, I kind of touch on this a little bit. I do think that like crime, or if not like outright crime, like violent crime, I do think like a certain level of, falsity, confidence artistry, kind of like scam artistry is kind of inherent to the Florida character. And that goes way back to, not like the people who developed Florida, obviously. I mean, Florida is rife with all these great land scams, like it's kind of passed into our culture as like this, like an old saw where like, oh, you bought your Florida retirement land and then you get down there and you step out of the car and, oh yeah, you bought land by the gallon, like that it is entered into our kind of, just consciousness as like Florida is this place where people are trying to grift you all the time, not just with like, real estate schemes, but also, like Miami, where I'm from, is, like the world capital and like, all kinds of fraud. I'm not even going to bother listing them off the top of my head, but it's just a place where, because it seemingly has no history and everybody is from somewhere else. And everybody was kind of, more or less lured there on a kind of like chimerical promise to begin with, right? Like the living's easier down there, or you can retire down there and enjoy the weather, or, you don't have to pay tax, like income tax down there, whatever it is. It's like a big kind of confluence of people who have already demonstrated that they're like kind of, if not gullible, then they're susceptible to, certain kinds of magical thinking. And then I think if you get down there and you realize that the living ain't exactly as easy or, as all that as you expected it to be, then, kind of typically American despair sets in. But more than that, it's not just the despair. It's that Florida is like a true kind of laissez-faire kind of state, at least in terms of like the kinds of like governing ethoses that go into it. Like stand your ground laws, more or less came out of Florida. The idea is that you come down there to Florida to escape, like Cleveland, like not just the cold weather or the old ethnic community in Cleveland or something like that, but to go down to Florida and really just do what you've always wanted to do anyway. You go down when you retire to just cut loose and blah, blah, blah. So I think it's a combination of like everybody who goes down there has been scammed and wants to scam. And then there's a certain kind of lawlessness, so that when the despair meets the lawlessness, it's like when hot and cold weather hit each other and then you got a hurricane, I think that's where your criminality and your strange, like Florida man, like robbing a person using an alligator as a weapon or something, like comes into play.
Well, let's see. There's a few more questions. Well, I'm curious about this one. Did Glenn sustain permanent damage to his good-natured and hopeful worldview? From a ringer.
Permanent, huh? Yeah, I was just talking to him yesterday, actually.
That was going to be another question. Do you still talk to these guys?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's. I have had some other friends of mine like remark that it is like, while not comparing it to like actual like military service or something like that, or like going to prison even, it is like something that only by like sharing that experience will we only ever truly understand it amongst each other. For as much as I try to convey it in writing, like to know the true depths of that depravity, you kind of had to me and like breathe in my farts for 4 months. But yeah, no, there's still, I don't know that like Glenn is permanently disfigured by it, but I think he knows himself a little bit better, like he knows the depths to which he can sink, the despair that he can reach. He's plumbed his depths from this trip. I think, you can return to the surface after that, but just how deeply you can go after that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. He seemed like, all y'all had your own skill sets and your own person. Part of the fun of the book was seeing that. I mean, Glenn was this sort of sweet Canadian guy, and Noah's like ex-Marine, and you're badass journalist, Florida native, and having y'all all come together was pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, the hope is that it would almost seem sort of like a microcosm of the state, right? Where, like you're saying, with all three of our powers combined, like Captain Planet, we, turn into like something that kind of approximates whatever Florida does by combining all these disparate elements from different geographical areas and all the rest of it to, make the place the crazy, crazy place it is. But
well, what somebody else asks, like, what was the most uncanny thing you saw on your walk? Most disturbing, most beautiful? I mean, think of one of each of those at least, but I'm curious about particular.
Wait, what was the first one? The first.
What was the most uncanny thing?
Uncanny. Okay.
And the most disturbing and beautiful.
Okay. Disturbing. So beautiful. Beautiful. Probably like hands down was the Everglades. And like I was saying, that was almost like the treat after dinner for us because, that was like the one true place you can point to in Florida and be like, that's beautiful, or at least with the route that we took.
I'm glad were you to see that area you could walk. What was that? They had like a sort of something parallel to the highway that was actually wooded.
Oh yeah, in the Everglades. Yeah, there was actually in the Everglades. There's like I forget what you call it, but there's like where the Tamiami Trail kind of does a little bit of a dip. There's like a crushed rock path you can take, and a lot of people like to take their bikes through there because it's south of the actual trail itself, and you can get real deep in the Everglades and really come across, some beautiful plume birds and some panthers every now and then and stuff. But, we stuck along the Tamiami Trail. They have campsites there, which was kind of miraculous. Like they were perfectly spaced along the way for us to hit them. But yeah, that was to see, sawgrass waving in the breeze. And it's, at that point, it was like, I don't even remember. It may have been like early December, and it's not too hot. And yeah, just to actually be around, even if you are on like this tremendously ecologically devastating highway, like to be around and surrounded by, something that could even come close to be calling untouched nature felt like I understood then why people would want to do like a walk through the Appalachian Trail or something. That was like the first taste of actual like being around something beautiful and that wasn't necessarily man-made. So yeah, the Everglades bar none was the most beautiful. Most disturbing, that one has a lot of competition. It's you get like, it didn't happen too often, but sometimes people, whether or not they were just trying to screw with you or they were actually homicidal, you couldn't tell. When maybe they would kind of slowly drift their car over into the shoulder where we were walking. We'd have to dive into like a drainage ditch or something. That happened a couple times, and that was greatly disturbing because, again, you just didn't know what the thinking was. If somebody was just like asleep behind the wheel, or they were like dozing off, or like they actively wanted to do you harm or something like that. Like that was kind of screwed us up. And that was, we were kind of anticipating, we were walking against traffic, obviously, so you could see it coming. And the whole of our like safety regimen was just like trying to look into windshields as cars approached and like make eye contact with them, because we figured if we made eye contact, they'd like, there's no way they would like jerk the wheel and explode us,
Of course, you're in Florida where you can actually tint every window, right? Or maybe
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
the cars are that way.
Yeah, exactly. And, as luck would have it, whenever somebody did kind of do one of these and come our way, they did have incredibly tinted windows. Yeah. And, so that was, what was the third one again? Uncanny.
The most beautiful.
No, beautiful Everglades, harrowing traffic, uncanny.
Yeah. Uncanny.
The
Panther? Or did you make that up?
No, did see the Panther. No, uncanny, probably Seaside. Seaside being like the place. Well, you know what? No, between Seaside and Golden Gate Estates where we did see the Panther, and they're both kind of the same nature, where it's like Seaside, for those who don't know, is this like perfectly planned community, which, so what, those are all over Florida. However, like the conceit of Seaside is that there are no cars allowed in there, and there's a lot of stringent like land use requirements, and so you have to you can only have like certain kinds of homes, and all the homes look like old Florida homes, raised homes built to funnel cross breezes, like China berry trees over them and all the rest of it. But of course they were built in 1990. So it's all this like these weird, kind of ersatz monuments to like what people believed Florida used to be. All the wealthy people along the Gulf tend to go there. So it's like this weird theme park for like wealthy Gulf, auto dealership owners to like go and act out what they think Florida used to be. So that was very kind of weird to be there, especially if you like look bedraggled as we did, and we're like pushing a shopping cart in there, and everybody is just like, giving you the bums rush with their eyeballs,
They probably have a bylaw now that says no shopping carts.
Yeah. Yeah, after we hooked up all our film gear to like the outdoor like garden lights in public spaces so we could recharge it, they're probably like, okay, no more of this. Yeah, that was uncanny. And then Golden Gate Estates also, which again, to anybody unfamiliar, is one of these great land scams that people tried to pull in Florida. One of them involved building the world's biggest suburb, like whatever you want to call it, like a subdivision suburb. And it was going to be bigger than the city of Boston. And it was going to be carved out of the westernmost edge of the Everglades. But of course, it being a scam, it fell apart. And there are homes there and there are people who live there, but the vast majority of it are just these ghostly, like, crushed lime rock, roads that just extend into nothing. And back in the 80s, like drug dealers used to land planes in there and stuff. Like it's truly lawless. Like it would take it would take the police like an hour and a half to get in there because there's only like one entrance from the outside. Then there's just this big grid of nothing except like, very fierce individualists and then like meth labs. So that was also very uncanny. It was like the mirror image, the inverse of Seaside, but both those places, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know about that place. That is pretty fascinating. Those are
Yeah.
definitely two ends of the spectrum as far as Florida there.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. Like, how often do you think about just renting a car? I mean, I know like a few times that was mentioned, but amazing and break down and do it. But that was, must have been discussed nightly.
Oh yeah, no, there was in fact, anytime we walked by like a super Walmart, which itself, like anytime, you don't think about this when you're in a car. That's kind of one thing that I realized, it seems like a really banal thing to realize, but like when you're walking and like, you're like, okay, the super Walmart is here. Like I see the sign and here's the turn in, but it itself is like a quarter of a mile away, like it existed like a mirage. And it was just like so far away where you'd have to like, drive down this long lane and then a bunch of parking lots. So like every time we passed like a super Walmart, we would like look upon it as if it was like a mirage oasis. And yeah, like that would be first, we were all like, let's just get bikes. Like why aren't we doing this on bikes? It would be like roughly the same thing. It would be pretty much as dangerous, but we could like cover a lot more ground and we could, stay longer in places because we could, do like, I don't know how many miles a day, like 50 miles a day or something. And so bikes at first were the big temptation. And the thought was that like, whatever you call those, like, you hitch it to the back of the adult bike and it's like a little like pod for your child or your dog or whatever. And we were thinking like we buy a bunch of those and then like put all the gear in there, but then of course the idea is that like you lose your balance and you like swing into oncoming traffic and then you have an obituary. So we never actually like broke and did that, but that was the first temptation. And then after that was, yeah, the desire anytime you would see like an old beater of a car, in somebody's front yard or something. Or, obviously you pass by a lot of auto dealerships or, billboards for used cars or whatever. It was the little devil on our shoulder whispering the entire time. But Glenn, God love him, his good nature, he just refused until, like I said, we got to about, 2/3 of the way done. Then he was ready to listen to any and all kind of devilish Florida, inducements to not do it the straight way.
You broke him down.
Yeah. I don't think I broke him down. I think the state of Florida broke him down, It's,
yeah, the trip.
Yeah, it's like, when entering the state, it's like entering Dante's Inferno, abandon all hope, ye who enter. It should just be abandon all sense, ye who enter. And yeah, by the end of it, Glenn was definitely broken down.
So have you been back to Florida since your journey?
I have not actually. Is that true? Yeah, that's true. I have not. I know that Glenn has. I know that Noah has. But no, I have not. My family actually, we're all from Miami, but everybody has since dispersed, and so there's no real reason for me to visit aside from my own like great nostalgia and desire to go back there. But yeah, it's like a dream that I have where if I made like, $5 million somehow, I would like buy Rosetta Stone Spanish and then like drive a boat back to Miami like a true prodigal son. But yeah, no, I have not been back. And it's even we did arrive in Miami at the end of it. Like even that just felt so, talk about uncanny. Like Miami is a lot like New York, at least insofar as like it only exists as you remember it for like a very brief span of time, and then just like the constant churn of both like incoming money and real estate development, just turn it into something else within like 3 years. So yeah, every time I go back to Miami, in Florida, for that matter, it just feels like a completely different place. There's no, I think I mentioned this at the end of the book, where there's no true way to capture Florida because Florida is always existing in kind of like the conditional future tense, where Florida will always be something else, just like in, a year's time or something like that.
Yeah. Would you move back?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, Yeah, like I was saying, I would need to have a lot of money, I think.
Under the
But
right circumstances.
yeah. I think I would totally move back, and I would be able to rationalize it if I was like, like a lot of people do. If I made a lot of money somehow, and then I wanted like a second home and a tax haven, ooh, I would do it in a heartbeat. I would be that which I have, kind of decried. But yeah, it took me leaving Florida to truly understand like the phenomenon of the snowbird. Like it used to piss me off as a kid, and I never understood it. And who are these people who just come and spend money and then leave, whatever. And then I moved up to New York and experienced like my first February, and I was like, oh yeah, no, I totally get it now. Like I didn't understand that where I was living, was half of the year like paradise, and people actually want to go there for that. So I would totally go back just if I had a winter home in Florida.
Well, so how is it? How have you been doing during this strange pandemic era? I know you said you're not in New York. You're out west with the fam, quarantining. It's got to be weird to have a book come out right now. I mean, normally I feel like we went on a road trip together when you came here for the book. I mean, we had
Yeah.
Dr. Jerry Ward, our buddy. We had Phil Cly, and you know,
Uh-huh.
and we were together for like 3 days, but we just weren't
Yeah.
everywhere. We were just
Yeah.
walking from bar to bar. But so normally you would be here and we
Yeah.
would be having a big time. But
Yeah.
are you doing a lot of these events? And I think you did one with your sister maybe, and
Yep.
got
Yep.
some more coming up.
Yeah, it's well, talk about plumbing one's depths. I feel like I got you to do that, Cody, when I was there last time. But uh, yeah, it's truly bizarre. I mean, uh, yeah, I got a couple more of these events to do eventually, and I love this. In fact, like it would seem easy to kind of decry, not being able to, like you said, go down and go to actual bookstores and interact with people. But what is it? It's been like, 130 days or something, at least since we began to like quarantine in New York. And yeah, think I'm starting to lose my mind. And I've lived by myself. I don't even know how long at this point. So I was kind of, I do freelance writing and all the rest of it. So really, thankfully, gratefully, I was not too greatly affected by the quarantine. But at the same time, like it has robbed me of all my outlets to like go to the gym and just like wave to a person. So like now it's like my normal day-to-day life, but only much deeper and darker in a way. So getting the opportunity to do these events is awesome. And it's not just getting to see another human face, but it's getting to talk and to talk about stuff that I deeply love. So yeah, no, I mean I wish I could be out and doing stuff, but at the same time I'm grateful that I've been lucky in comparatively in all this Corona time stuff, and that I still get to talk to interested parties about the book. But yeah, it's a weird time. I mean it it also just it feels weird to have something that you worked on for so long to come out in like perhaps the most like the moment of like in which time is like condensed like a collapsed star, and all these what feel like historical moments, like 5 different historical moments are just cramming into one space. And if you're trying to release a book or a movie or like an album or anything that isn't like directly tied into those events, I feel like it can make you feel like you're shouting into the void. But that's where I plug this book. Is for those of you who don't have or haven't read it, I like to think that this book kind of ties into a lot of the American psyche that has led us to this point. But yeah, I mean I'm just happy. I'm happy to be here, Cody. I'm just happy to
Yeah,
be here.
man. Well, I was gonna say, I mean, this really is. I read a lot, and it's so great to. It is kind of like perfect for the moment. We got the election coming up
Yeah.
for another thing to destroy the star or whatever you were saying, but it's funny as hell. It's just great detailed stuff. Being an ex Southern Studies grad student, it's like
Hmm.
you learn a lot, but it's also it's just good fun. And it's I think I don't know that much about Florida except for the Keys and Miami and the
Yeah.
Panhandle, but you definitely get it all in there, and it's just a blast. So
Yeah, that's a rejected tagline from our documentary. We're going to get it all in there, no matter what, just all the insanity. But yeah, no, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
well, and we do have signed. Kent was kind enough to sign some book plates for us, so we got signed copies. So hope everybody can buy some copies from us. Support Kent. Hopefully you've got your financial situation under control. This one
It's on.
Give the advance back, right?
Yeah, it's on to the next at this point. Actually, they've changed the unemployment rules in New York City, so I've actually never been making more money than I am right now, living off the dole.
Nice.
This is incredible. I couldn't believe this wasn't possible before. But no, it's on to the next one for me, and the next one, hopefully, God willing, will be about demons. Demons, literal and metaphorical. So look out for that one.
Sounds like it's maybe in the family. That runs in the family.
Yeah.
Well, it's great to have you, man, and congrats on the book.
Thank you.
And take care of yourself, and stay in touch. Hi, Karen. Bye, Karen.
Thank you guys so much for having me. It's always an honor, and I hope everybody stays safe, and let's do it again real soon.